Welcome to TrailManners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for TrailManners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails, Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Welcome to the TrailManners podcast, episode number 27. Today, we are bringing back one of our favorites, Mr. Ty Draney, to discuss his experience at Barkley's. Not only that, but this is our first show we're doing via Google Hangouts. So Joel, myself, and Ty are all in different locations. So we're going to see how this goes. Hopefully it goes well. So if this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The TrailManners podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at TrailManners. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome to the TrailManners podcast. It is a monumental day here, for the reason being we are doing this through Google Hangouts. So we've got Joel at his home, and we've got a special guest, our first two-time guest to the show, Mr. Ty Draney. Ty, how are you?
I'm doing better than I deserve. Appreciate it. Thanks.
So like we said, we're bring this through Google Hangouts, so we're not in person like we're used to. So this is going to be a good test for the sound, everything we're doing. But the biggest reason behind this show is the Barkley's Marathon, because Mr. Ty Draney went out and participated in the event, and we wanted to get to him while it was still fresh. So for those of you that don't know about Barkley's, or Barkley's, I've heard it both ways now, so I don't know if it's because some people are from Canada and some of the U.S. or what, but
don't spell it the wrong way.
What's that?
So don't spell it the wrong way.
Yeah, right. So I'm not on Twitter. So the race was first held in 1986 and was inspired by the 1977 escape of James Earl Ray from the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. It's considered one of the toughest 100-mile races in the world, 59,000 plus feet of climb over more than 100 miles. That's more than 33,000 feet of climb than hard rock. So that's pretty stout. It's a 5-loop course. The start times vary depending on the conch shell, and it starts with the lighting of a cigarette. I mean, these are just some of the caveats, and from what I've heard and learned is for the virgins of the race, it's like $1.60 and a license plate to get in and an essay. Am I nailing that so far, Ty?
Yeah, this year that's what it was.
So what else was there that I missed? I mean, can you give us a little? You were there. It's pretty secret. So what did I miss?
Well, I'd just tell you, but it's a secret. I mean, that's part of the deal going on. But yes, there is there are certain times, certain things that you need to do, and you got to know somebody to get into the race. Jared Campbell's been working on me for a while about getting in and doing this and experience it, and experience it I did, no doubt about it. But definitely as old school as it gets, and I don't know, I think those actually finished had to bring Laz a pack of unfiltered Camels and $1.60. So yeah, it's an experience. Everyone seems to have seen the documentary. It's kind of like the new book, right? Everyone says, "Hey, I saw the documentary," and it gives you a pretty good idea of what goes on there in Frozen Head every April.
So you kind of came at this, in my opinion anyway, kind of under the radar. Like, you didn't really let the cat out of the bag, right? Is that on purpose?
A little bit. It's as part of when you do, if and when you do get in, 40 people get in each year. You turn in your essay, and then you get a condolence letter from Laz saying, I regret to inform you that you've been selected for the 2016 Barkley Marathons, and it, it goes, and he goes on, and that's part of his warning. He says, we won't post this on a list anywhere, so you can fail. And so when you do fail, that you can do so, you can maintain some shred of dignity, and that's kind of the. I wish I had it here in front of me to I printed it off and kept it, but stuff like that, and things like maybe you shouldn't worry so much about training and just getting your affairs in order. So it's all ominous, tongue in cheek, like that, but it's all it's built for.
So I guess you go to the race. Since you haven't been there before, right? Even as a crew or spectator or anything?
Nope, that was my first time to Tennessee, let alone Frozen Head.
Really? So what was your understanding or feel for the pre-race or the mood or the people that were there? Was it seem like it was bigger than years past, from like maybe Jared mentioning it or Laz or someone that's been there before?
Oh, the media presence was crazy. I don't know why I have the luck of ending up at these events, but it obviously on a smaller scale you don't have as many runners, but it reminded me of Hard Rock in 2014 when Killian showed up. The drones and the mass media at the finish when Jared finished. It was crazy, and just the thirst, I guess, I don't know, prompted by the documentary, but there was a lot of that. I think I picked up just from participating this year and from Patagonia Trail Running sending stuff out and Leon sending stuff out, that I think in 24 hours I picked up like 150 followers on Instagram, just because inquiring minds want to know. I don't know if it's the mystery, it's the new thing, I don't know how many people in the last month have said, oh yeah, I saw that documentary. And I think it's part of that phenomenon, as the sport grows and people are trying to figure out what on earth that makes Laz click and why he does what he does out there.
So with the documentary and the social media and the blogs and the articles and those stinking podcasts that are out there, do you think it's going to change much with that race? Do you think it's going to change the feel, what it originally was? I mean, what do you think on that?
It has to influence it, but I think this was a pretty good test this year, kind of. I think, again, referring back to Hard Rock a couple of years ago, that it held up well. It's going to be interesting to see could they hold to their core values, but there's a certain amount of adaptation that has to take place, right? And like you said, we're all part of this problem of the sport growing, but I think they will. You got that core group there, and I think as long as Laz is there, that he pretty much makes it clear that he's going to do whatever he likes, and it's his race, and that was part of the appeal to me, that there wasn't updates every aid station. In fact, there weren't really any aid stations, so any of that stuff was kind of a parody of what we do, but they hold pretty tight to a lot of those rules and expectations that they have.
So are we ready to maybe then jump into the actual event itself now?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, from when you arrived, take us through preparation, conch blow, sleep, and start, and your first lap.
That's a lot, but they have that 12-hour window when the race is going to start. Someone was claiming that the Laz decides.
Do you know beforehand?
What's that?
Do you know that beforehand? So
yeah.
Yep. start from like midnight to such and such time?
Midnight to noon on Saturday was all fair game. All of us, me included, not that I knew anything, were anticipating, because last year they got a really late start. I want to say it was like 11:45 or something. So people waited around all morning, just waiting to. Well, and he blows it 1 hour. You have 1 hour once he blows the shell, and so all of us were anticipating maybe like a midnight and 5 minutes or something super early. But he claims that's part of his thing, is he sets the time a year ahead of time.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't tell anybody, and he tries to anticipate what everybody thinks he will do and do the opposite. And so, just how his mind works, I guess. So we started at like 10:42 or something, was 10:45 as something official start time, and so there's a lot of waiting around for sure. You could tell the people who were handling that well and people who weren't handling that well. It was nice to get a full night.
Weren't handling it well. What were they doing?
Oh, just already getting frustrated, you know, stomping around, saying waiting for the bleeping shell to blow, and yeah, I think that's the number one takeaway I got from this is, I mean, from that very first condolence letter, it's just full on mentally that
Right.
he's gonna yank your chain, you know, any way he can to kind of test your even more your physical fitness, your mental fitness, and your desire to compete and participate in his event. And so we waited around. Yeah, that's just like the air going out of a balloon when that conch shell finally blew. You know, everyone's like, "Oh, thank goodness, we know." And then yeah, everyone just kind of assembles. It's a small group, 40 people. There were at least that many more press people there as there were runners. And
Wow.
then it's just pretty unceremonious. They count it down, and Laz lights his cigarette, and we went running up the trail, what little there was, a little trail right there out of the campground, and it was on just like that.
So what was your plan then for your first loop? Did you have a plan?
Yeah, actually, and I didn't know him beforehand, but I knew of him. I teamed up with Jason Poole. He's done a ton of. In fact, he's actually competed at the World Orienteering Championships, things like that. And so I knew I didn't have the fitness or the gusto to try to stay with Jared and Gary.
Right.
And just as we figured, they went charging, and the 3 or 4 people who went charging after him, it ended poorly for those guys. I think earlier than it normally would have, as we started picking people up off on that second loop, and we made a good team, like I say, and he was very kind to help me out, you know, helping with bearings and helping us find the books. And he'd run the race previously, but it had been about 8 years, so
Oh, wow.
it's kind of evolves, and so there were some things even he wasn't really prepared for, and yeah, I don't know, it's hard to explain because I don't think I'm as erect physically as I would have been in a normal race, because you can't ever just really charge. You know how we come even in a big 100. I mean, there comes a point you just kind of bow your neck and put your head down and follow the markers, and just it just becomes all effort. And at no point is it ever that way at Barkley, you know. All the other effects, keep finding the books again, you know. You're giving a written description of where the books are, and you know, it's about as incredibly vague as
What's
you
one of
might
those written
imagine.
descriptions? Do you remember one of them offhand, so we can have kind of an
It'll say
experience of what
things
one's
like
like?
you'll find it under the dead tree 3/4 of the way up the ridge. Okay, thanks.
Pretty specific.
Yeah, have you been in the forest back there? Yeah, there's lots of dead trees in that forest and lots of ridges, and so yeah, it comes down. He has a master copy of the map, and you don't see it, you bring your own map and you got to copy that off of, and it's a park map, which is arguable how accurate that thing is anyway. And then yeah, you're just going. And so we spent a lot of time. Eric Storheim was with us too on that first lap, and until he fell and literally split open his butt. It was a good one. Yeah, it was like a huge paper cut on his right cheek. And he ended up pulling partway through the second loop for a few other reasons. So Jason and I spent the whole 42 hours you were out there, So the rules are you get 12 hours per lap and we got through our first one in about 10 hours. That gave us a few more hours to get through our second, so we were under the cutoff. And then I determined I had had enough fun. I wasn't going to go out for a third loop. I thought I was prepared for the onslaught of do-gooders there at camp trying to get me back out there. And
not with Leon there, huh?
What's that?
Not with Leon there, huh? He kicked you right out.
Oh, I was even prepared. Who got it was Mindy Campbell. Was just way too kind, and here she is. The rest of them, I told them I was well prepared to tell them to hang it in their ear and be able to walk away. And when Mindy's taking care of you, and she's 5 months pregnant, and she knows all the right things to say, and so I figured I didn't have anything else to do anyway. I might as well head up for another lap. I knew the way we were moving, we weren't going to make the cutoff. So to get the fun run in, or 3 laps, you have 40 hours. And I think we ended up at 42 hours and 4 minutes, I believe. And so I don't even know what that means other than we didn't officially get a fun run, but we collected all our pages, and I don't know. So still trying to figure all that out. So we were either didn't finish or we were like 4th place.
One of the two.
Yeah, one of the two. It's all same difference.
So one loop is approximately what? I've heard from 20 to 26 miles. What would you gather? I mean, I guess it varies depending on being lost or something.
Well, yeah, it depends on how much extracurricular you add on there. But I would guess that's somewhere in between there. I'm guessing it was 24-ish, maybe. Like I say, you add these little spurs. It's hard to tell, without any GPS, without an altimeter, any of that stuff. It'll be interesting someday when that's all revealed to see really what it was. This year they were telling us there was 67,000 feet of climbing, which I can't.
That's wow.
Yeah, I did, but though it was plenty. And my last climb up this climb they called Checkmate I swore it was 10,000 feet. I mean, just crawling on all fours and through the dead leaves and the rocks and I just thought it was never going to end. But I'm not a math guy either, but I have a hard time believing you can get that much climb without having 5 and 6 and 7,000 foot climbs like you do at Hard Rock, Mm-hmm. But it was plenty. And you get 2 that you go clockwise, 2 you go counterclockwise, and then if there's like there were this year, Gary and Jared had to decide one was going to go one way and one was going to go the other way, and somehow they decided that ahead of time. So.
Well, I mean, just looking at it in perspective, when you're talking about 20 plus miles, I mean, you hear 20 plus miles, you don't think it's going to take 10 hours, right? I mean, you do a marathon race and you're sub 3 or a little over 3. So at 10 hours, I mean, that's perspective. That's a long time for 20 miles.
Well, there's so many opportunities to, again, because there's not a single marking out there. And you're just going off of your map, you're getting bearings, and you're finding this spur and you're following the ridge down. And so, yeah, the opportunity to lose time, A, in camp between laps, and then just B, when you're trying to find the books. I mean, so you're often moving a lot better clip than that, but then suddenly you lose 45 minutes because you can't find the book. right? Or you're off, and you only have to be off one click, and there's a lot of dead trees in that forest or whatever, and it could that that stuff creeps up on you, and then you start adding. I was awake for 48 hours straight,
Wow.
and you start adding that to my already feeble mind powers anyway, and then it's you just end up moving incredibly slow, and there's so little margin for error, and that's what's so amazing for like Jared doing what he's done, is to be able to handle all that. As the course gets tougher each year, every time someone completes it, he makes it a little bit harder, and
Well, yeah, when you look even at Jared, I mean, he finished in 2012 in like 56 hours, 2014 57 hours, and then this year 59 hours and 30 minutes. That's unreal.
I just can't imagine being awake that long. That was a thing by mine. I think physically I could have kept going, but again, I wasn't moving fast enough to where I could get any sleep in between laps. And yeah, that just becomes incredibly difficult to process all that you need to process to finish like that.
So one of the things that was new this year was when you're getting one of the books, you had to read Braille. Is that correct?
Oh, kind of.
Kind of.
They did have a book in Braille out there because the one gal was attempting it. But originally when we checked in, we got these cards that had our note, because you have to pick your page number that corresponds with your bib number. And so he gave us his card so we'd know which page was ours, right? Because none of us read Braille but her. But in the end, when he lit his cigarette, he told us he was just yanking our chain and just to grab a page. It didn't matter.
That would have been a serious mind game, having to find that thing in Braille. You're already tired enough.
Well, and you just don't know. Probably the funny, and if I had anything unique happen to me, is I show up and it's almost like a little ceremony. I'd actually had some correspondence with him and already sent my license plate in, but I brought another in just because I wanted to be part of the, like on the video, you hand it in and shake his hand and that sort of thing. And so I show up and he didn't have my number. It had I don't know, it had stuck to somebody else's number or my assigned number, and I'm still wondering a little bit if that wasn't part of his deal, just to see how I would react. And he told me I needed to go find my number in camp, and I said, well, so I'm number 77. I'll be running tomorrow with or without that. I didn't ever go in asking anybody. I was going to go around camp saying, hey, have you found my number? So I actually didn't have a number my first lap officially, and then I enjoyed giving him a hard time about being the only person in history to have to do a whole lap before he actually got his number at Barkley. So, so again, I think he was pretty sincere in that it got misplaced or it stuck to the other guy, number 76 or number 78 or whatever, but no one ever stepped forward, and so I just did my first lap without a number, and then just had to remember it, and then I got my other numbers the next couple laps. So yeah, kind of funny.
So I know that the whole thing to me just is ridiculous, just hearing about it, tough. What was the toughest part for you? You were talking about the physical part, you could have went longer. Was it the mental part of it? Was it the not knowing? I mean, what do you feel like was the toughest part?
Yeah, just the route finding, and then yeah, just even though you're repeating a loop, interestingly enough, the loops, we did our first two. The one, the second one was all in the dark, well, mostly in the dark. And so that really made no sense to me. It wasn't until I went out on that third lap and went the other direction that I kind of at least got a better idea of where I was and what was going on. I don't know how to explain it. It kind of gave me a 3D view, kind of. I was like, oh, finally, I see where we're at now. I get what's going on. And not that it helped me find books any faster, but there were sections, even though I was more tired, of clarity, that because I had been there, been through there, and then kind of going back the other direction. I could see why it was such a huge advantage to, go back and having been there once already, rather than relying so heavily on others and stumbling around the park.
So saying being there once already, is this something you're going to attempt again, you think? Or is it kind of a one and done?
Probably not. I don't think so. I got a limited amount of time, I think, to be able to do some other events, and I won't ever say never, because you don't know. But I experienced what I set out to, and it was awesome, and I'm glad I got to be a part of that, because I don't know if how long the race will be around as it is. If something happens to Laz, if it'll even continue. There's a whole bunch of other things there, and yeah, I have others on the bucket list now. I don't have this burning desire now to think, well, I almost got a fun run, I got to go back and finish. None of that, at least right now.
Nice.
So if you did change your mind, you did go back, how much of an advantage do you think you'll have then? Haven't seen the course already.
A lot. Well, it depends on how long it is too. How the course changes and evolves each year. But huge. I could rely a lot less on other people and information and things to get around the park, because at least now I kind of have a general idea of the layout and how it goes, what happens back there. So
So how did you deal with the navigation component, where you had that map and you had your compass? Were you comfortable with that?
No, not at all.
Did you get better at it?
No, yeah, just I spent most of the time mooching. I can read a map, and I can, but yeah, I relied heavily, especially that first lap, on Jason, and then like I say we ended up joining up with another guy on that last lap that we caught, who had been there a bunch of times. And it's always weird kind of working with somebody, especially in a race that long, because everybody's energy ebbs and flows are different and stuff like that. And I think in a different situation, I don't know that we would have all stuck together, but by the time you spent 40 hours with somebody working on this, it felt like the right thing to do, to just tromp it on out, and it was awesome. I did enjoy it, and I appreciated his being willing to take me under his wing and help me out through that.
With Gary going with Jared, and Jen Lynn was was it Heather Anish?
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of the game plan you got to go into this with, is find that person that's been there before, and not, like you said, mooch, but
work together.
It's like a mental relationship at the point.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I understand the first guy that ever finished a 100-miler came from England, and he did it on site like that, and that's mind-blowing to me, that even whatever the course was 10 or 15 years ago, that someone could do that. Even someone as experienced as Jason, you're either in the dark or there's not landmarks per se. You
Right.
don't. It's not like the Wasatch Front runs north and south, and you can kind of figure that out. You're down in these hollows, and it's it's confusing.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game back there in those wooded environments, because, like you said, you don't have that line of sight like we do out here in the West.
Yeah, it's huge. It makes it super confusing. And then the little side trails and the ins and outs, and the game trails, and then there were probably maybe 5 miles total on that loop that were actually established trails. Otherwise, they're like, hey, the book's at Leonard's Butt Slide. Oh, got it.
So if you were to do it again, I know we're speaking in that context a little bit, would you do anything differently to prepare than say you did this time, or is there something you picked up on that you might do differently?
It would definitely be the compass work. I'd need to improve there. Physically, actually, I think I nailed it. I think I was pretty good where I needed to be. I think the tendency for some is to overtrain for Barkley. I know there are a lot of people that towed the line that were just cooked,
Really?
from all their laps, and and I went last month or whenever it was at the end of February there to Rufa and had an eye opener there. I knew I was way behind and just clicked it off and was a little more consistent. I had a couple weeks of about 35,000 feet of climb, but I think the last training run was about 10 days out. I got in almost 12,000. But yeah, the numbers are so weird. It's so different than other things. Like that last training run was 12,000 feet of climb and I want to say 10 miles.
Wow.
So but I think the physical part was pretty good. I don't know how you practice for the sleep deprivation, but yeah, I would definitely get better at using a compass for sure.
So what's next on the calendar for you? Now you got kind of Barkley out of your system. You guys full on the track season up there in Star Valley?
Oh yeah, we're getting after it. So yeah, busy with track stuff. Next race will be I think the 60K at Smut. I think I'll go run it. I may make it up to Bighorn to pace maybe, and then I've got Old Gabe is a new one for me up there in Bozeman.
Oh, nice.
50K. Also, that's a busy June. July, got my focus event is helping at Kroger's at Hard Rock. I made the cut there, so that's going to be a good time. I'm excited to go up there with Rock and Jared. And
so, how do you make the cut to the Kroger's aid station? Did somebody retire?
They were busy. I think there was a couple of guys who had like family emergencies or family trips, and a couple others got into the race, and so yeah,
you were on the wait list then for that aid station.
Yeah, so I got bumped up, got moved up off the wait list. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then the actual focus event is Fat Dog in August, and so
how long
all these kind of lead toward that. What's that?
So how long is that Fat Dog race?
120 miles.
Nice. So you're in for this big excruciating stuff then, right? Because some of those other races, Old Gabe, I mean they're pretty tough too.
Yeah, I guess I can be more competitive, because I'm more stubborn than I am talented and fast at this point. So that tips the scale a little bit in my favor if they're a little bit tougher that way.
Well, I think it's funny that you were waitlisted on a aid station. I don't think I've ever heard that before at Hard Rock. So
yeah, it's pretty big. Yeah, go back.
Everywhere.
Yeah, you have to go back and watch. Did you see the Solomon video they did last year on it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, to give back a little bit, and any time spent with Rocco is good time, and so yeah, it'll be fun to see. Luckily, we get him early in the early part, so people will still be pretty excited, fired up, and we'll get him taken care of and send him down the mountain.
That sounds pretty good. So how is the registration going for Vaquero Loco? Got some good numbers?
I think so. Honestly, I haven't looked that closely. This Barkley thing's kind of been all-consuming, and so yeah, we got to get some of that stuff going along too, and make sure we have that race this year.
Well, you need to go on that ultra sign up side on the being the race director and click that button to show people who's entered, the entrance list.
Oh yeah, you guys are eyeing the competition already, huh? I see what's going on.
I just want to see who's going, so I know who I got to fight for those Huckleberry sodas.
Oh, all right, all right. Yeah, well, we'll get to it. Like I say, it's been way down the list, but we'll get some of that stuff rolling along in the next couple of months. Get so we're ready and have enough sodas for everybody.
Well, I'll tell you, me and Joel usually not well, usually we always do these podcasts together, and we usually have a beer. But and I know this is so this show. I don't know if you see this, Ty. We're on a little Google Hangouts, but you got me hooked on these LaCroix drinks. So
There
I'm
you
having
go.
one today. I'm having one today for you. That cherry lime one is my favorite.
Perfect. Sounds good.
So I thought I'd
I'm not
suck one
gonna
of these
lie.
down when I talk to you.
Yeah,
I don't mind those.
one of these times I'll have to figure out how to get you some Huckleberry soda so you can have one of those the next time you have to do a podcast.
We'll take them.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that you went out there, and that's such a, I mean, just looking through the loops and everything at Barkley's, that's just an awesome experience, I'm sure. But just you know, what you went through, that's why I want to get to you early, just to hear the stories and hear, you know, that scares me. I mean, the part we talked about being in these little gullies and not being able to see, it's dark. I mean, I'll run a race, and if I don't see a marker every quarter mile, I freak out on a trail.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to get out of that mentality. And that's, it's been super interesting to me. I have a sister that lives back east, and she somehow en route, by the time I made it to Salt Lake, she had texted me for something else, and I told her I was on the road and what was going on. And first thing she's like, "Hey, we want to come." I'm like, "Save your, gas money, because it's just I'm not going to be in camp very much, and you're not going to be able to see anything." But I kind of turned to her. I said, "Hey, watch the Netflix documentary, and you'll have an idea what's a grocery shop." And the next day in Nashville, trying to get, buying, it's like a week's worth of groceries, I think, that I planned on to get through that race. Uh, that was one of the funny threads that went on kind of their listserv, was how many calories someone asked, how many calories does it take to finish Barkley? And of course, Laz came up with something like 41,000 something or other. And so everyone was speculating on how you could get your calories. It was like, 5 million bananas, or, 163 sticks of butter, and yeah. I went for lard. That was about my only contribution. I said, that's like 8.5 gallons of lard or something to take to
Oh, that's
get
like disaster pants.
yeah. But so I'm shopping for all this food, and I just get this text from my sister, and it says, "I watched the documentary. You be really careful." And so and my wife didn't even watch the documentary till I was back there. She said I started it a couple times and was like, she's too worried, and I didn't. Part of it's pretty. Oh, you still there?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
here.
I can hear
Part
you.
part of that
There
part
you
of
go.
that's pretty amazing. That he just sends some people with a number out there in the woods, and there's no aid stations. There's, the race director part of me is like, oh my gosh, no wonder the guy smokes and just sips on his moonshine or whatever, because that would make me crazy.
Yeah,
But
right. Somebody's gonna die doing that one year. Somebody's gonna get in over
well,
their head, and it's gonna be
but
cold and wet.
as hard as it was, I think something like Hard Rock is way more dangerous. And we had mild weather, and so I suppose if it's snow and you could get hypothermic, and some of that stuff could happen. But we had bluebird weather. It was almost too warm, for a little bit of it. But I didn't ever feel like, my life was in danger. I didn't ever hear any banjos playing in the forest or anything, so it was
Right.
pretty good.
Well, some of those guys took like 35 hours to complete just one loop.
They did. Yeah, we ran into that group. We were on our second loop, and they were navigating kind of like moths, I think. Wherever there was lights, they would flock to the lights. Because when they ended up flocking to us, we were also incredibly lost. So, and then they came running up, and anyway, yeah, we were trying to figure out where they came from, which lap they were on, and that was pretty amazing because we finished the second loop and then we're 2.5 hours into our third loop before we saw him again, and they still had to finish. So yeah,
Wow.
some pretty amazing stories, because I think Gary Robbins posted it best. He said, no one leaves camp with 35 hours worth of food.
That's a lot of lard.
Yeah, well, maybe they did. Maybe that's what they're sucking through those hydration facts. I don't know, but yeah, it's some pretty amazing. There's another gal there from Sweden that was out for 26 hours or something, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all that holds up as the race becomes more popular, and if they're going to be able to keep their secret stuff secret, and I don't know. It's a whole new interesting wrinkle in the sport that we do.
So besides watching the documentary, is there anything that it missed on? Like anything that you picked up on that was maybe wasn't included, that should have been included, that wasn't?
They did a great job, actually. I think it makes more sense once I've been there, I probably one thing that stood out to me, as you read the banter and stuff, and probably mostly people posting who haven't been able to get in, but they're like, can't believe what a control freak Laz is, and this and that and the other. He's just we're just pawns in this weird game of his, and all these things that you read he does really, really care about the runners. He does want to see everyone kind of push their limits. And I know in all the videos I've seen, the documentary included, he gets this look when especially when people finish the whole thing. And it's this, I don't know, he's just like his buttons are going to burst. He's just this proud papa, that someone jumped through these 5 million hoops. Because, and you think about it, as crazy as it is, and different as it is, I wouldn't say that it's less contrived than a normal race. I would say it's very much more contrived with its little ins and outs, and doesn't make it better, worse, whatever, but it's very contrived. But he is so pleased, when people are kind of able to put up with all that stuff and then just push through. That's kind of one of the things that I'll take with me, that just his effort to get to know every one of the runners, and that small of a field, I guess that's an easier thing to do. And then he really did, just really pleased that someone's able to pull it off, despite him completely stacking the odds against people. So I'd say it's pretty accurate, I think.
So other than that, Laz, he's kind of what he portrays then in the film and in real life.
Yeah, very much so. Give you a hard time. One of the things that I wasn't aware of is he goes through and does pre-race predictions for everybody. And like mine was that I was going to break the unbreakable record, the guy that spent 2 miles on the course and was out for 32 hours. And that I would be lost for the next 5 days. Jason Poole was going to be the first woman finisher. Yeah, so just all totally. And he took the time to, for the foreign athletes to at least Google Translate those into his own language and in their own language, and just a lot of, as bizarre as it might be, a lot of TLC. And the race director in me really appreciates A, that he spends so much time at it, and then B, that he does what he wants, and the park lets him do it, and he doesn't have to deal with all the red tape that the rest of us have to.
Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome. Seeing Jared 3 times, some of the other names on there, what they've done, just the hours out in that. And I don't care if you get 2 hours of sleep in camp or an hour. That's just the whole different game. I've always looked at Barkley's, but watching the documentary, my respect level went through the roof. So to see people like yourself go after, that's just awesome.
Yeah, it like I say, it lived up to expectations, and glad I got a chance to do that.
No, I just want to thank Ty for being number one, the first ever guest we've had on twice. That's
3
that's huge,
times.
right?
Yeah,
3,
right?
I don't know. Am I now? It might be the only 3-time finisher I've been then. If it's 3 times,
That's right. And we just hope this one turns out, right?
Well, hey, it wouldn't be the first time I've thrown you guys a dud, for sure.
I think so far it's pretty good. So for those of you that are going to listen to this show, we're doing this on the Google Hangouts right now. So it's going to be up on the Cat Blue Web Designs YouTube page, but I'll share that over with the TrailManners YouTube page so you can watch it. But we're interested to see how this turns out. It could be something awesome, like a new tool that we can use for future podcasts where we can go ahead and announce the time and the date, and you guys could watch it. You can also send us text questions if this turns out pretty good. I'm excited for it. I know Eric's been like super nervous for it.
Well, thanks again, Ty. We appreciate it. We don't want to take any more time away from you and your family. But we can't wait to see what else you do this year, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on at some point.
Well, appreciate it. You might keep in mind, next time I do have a face made for radio, so you know, keep that in mind with your new thing, with your new process here. So.
Well, by then, hopefully you'll have a beard back again.
Well, yeah. You know, it tends to do it itself, and it was coming back pretty good for the race, and then it was my wife's birthday yesterday, and so that was one of her requests, and so we're starting from scratch. So give me a month or two, and I'll be back in the game.
Well, we've been doing this for 40 minutes, and since we can see each other, I've actually seen it grow as we've been talking. So I like your chances.
I think just talking about Barkley does that to you, I think.
Well, nice. Well, thanks again. Me and Joel will be up at El Vaquero, and we definitely recommend everybody else jumping on because that's going to be not only a great race but a fun time. So we're excited to come up again this year.
All right,
thanks,
so we're going to go ahead and end the show then, guys. And like I said, look for this video on the TrailManners website, and then the actual podcast will air on Tuesday as normal. So again, thanks a lot for Eric jumping in. Thanks to Ty jumping in. This is TrailManners at our initial Google Hangout.
We'd like to thank you for listening to the TrailManners podcast, and also thank you for your patience while we work out the bugs through Google Hangouts. We promise they will get better. We'd also like to thank Mr. Ty Draney for joining us, sharing his experience at the Barkley Marathon. We'd like to encourage everybody out there to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at TrailManners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. Don't forget to check out all the TrailManners gear on our page. The Boco hats are going to be back in stock within the week. Don't forget to snag those. They go quick. So until next time, this is Eric Manning with Joel Hatch reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.